Hi, I'm Stephen Rothberg. I am the founder of College Recruiter Job Search Site, and this is the 22nd episode of the Job Board Leaders Roundtable calls. For those who are watching on video, you might be able to see Matt Farah of nurses.co.uk. He and I were the two that I think can be blamed most for wasting everybody's time month after month with these. In all seriousness, we do these on the second Thursday of each month at 11 a.m. US Eastern, which most of the year is, I think, at 4 p.m. in the UK, 5 p.m. in much of Europe. We get together, talk. The recent format has been, I'll start off by talking for 20 to maybe 30 minutes at the high end, with a guest to kind of introduce a topic and then open it up for discussion amongst everybody. Some people are able to talk and share their thoughts, etc. Other people, for just one reason or other, they're in an office or something, they'll just chat. Do whatever you're most comfortable with. The conversations tend to be very collegial, very collaborative. Personally, I find them extremely beneficial, and I hope everybody else does as well. These are on YouTube, LinkedIn. Like, comment, share, send to your 12 closest neighbors. Do whatever you like to do the best. Request that I have is, as we get into the discussion, if you want to contribute, ask a question, make a comment, whatever, just use the raise the hand feature for those who are connected live. Google Meet does a nice job of prioritizing those, and then I'll just kind of go in order. Guest today is the one and the only. For those who know him well, maybe they're thankful he's the only, but probably not. But Tim Dineen, who's the head of innovation for Aspen Technology Labs. College Recruiter's done business with Aspen for, I don't know, a dozen, maybe 15 years. They do a lot of job scraping and stuff for us, so we work with them in some other ways as well. But this conversation isn't about that. It's not going to be a sales pitch. We're just going to be tapping into Tim's vast experience in the job board world. So Tim, welcome. Great to see you.
Oh, thanks for having me. Looking forward to the chat. I understand we're both a little bit under the weather, but looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, and you're in Connecticut, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm in Minneapolis. So if you had a cold, I think it's very unlikely that you gave it to me. But somebody's responsible for making you a little bit under the weather, and then me as well, but we'll persevere. So maybe before we get into it, for folks who don't know you, maybe give us like the 30 seconds, like, how did you get into this weird industry? What are some of the places that you've worked, the work that you've done? I see some people on the call who've actually worked with you very directly, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah, 30 seconds would be hard, but I've been in the industry about 20 years, 30 years if you include things that I did before joining the industry. But about 20 years ago, I joined Indeed. I was one of the early employees at Indeed. It came about as kind of an interesting way. I haven't really shared this publicly, I don't think, but like I was working.
It's just you and me. Nobody else
is
talking or listening. It's all good. And when you want to share the ATM password with me, that's fine too.
It's kind of funny. I was working with at a web development company, building e-commerce sites, and I just used the word Indeed a lot. This coworker started calling me Indeed Dineen. So I'm like, hey, that's an interesting moniker. Maybe I should buy that domain or something like that. And I pulled it up. I saw that it was a job site. I searched and I found that they were hiring in my state for a person that does exactly what I do. So that's how I got into this industry. I didn't have any recruiter experience or things like that. So I had a lot of online marketing is what I called it at the time. SEO experience and things like that. So I joined Indeed, and I was their sole consumer-facing marketer for a couple years.
Okay. And then after Indeed, and I think this is when I think your path and mine really first crossed. I remember you were at what used to be called IEWS, the International Association of Employment Websites. Now it's TA Tech. You were at a conference there with this little company, I think called Recruitics. I think that might have been the first time that you and I were in the same place at the same time.
Yeah, I recall meeting then. So yeah, after Indeed, I focused on SEO there. Did I think a pretty good job. And I apologize to this day for that. But I wanted to focus on the other side. So Indeed helps people find jobs. I wanted to help employers find people and make that process easier. So it was hard back then. It was 18 years ago. It was like using the Indeed dashboard, and most job sites were still publishing by post, and a single post that was duration based. And I was a huge fan my entire career of pay-per-click advertising, SEO, SEM, and I wanted to help employers get access to that. Using the Indeed dashboard at the time wasn't really something I wanted to do myself, and so I focused on figuring out how to automate advertisements to go to Indeed. Simply hired, Juju, like some other sites that were around at the time, and that automation turned into programmatic, which the word I didn't know at the time, but I was just building things to make it easier for advertisers to participate on sites like that.
So Tim, when did you leave Indeed and start Recruitics? What year
So
was
I left
that?
Indeed in the spring of 2009.
Okay.
It was still a small company at that point, but like I said, I felt like I had done my job pretty well, and it was time for something new. So I joined a small staffing company. I thought my commute would be a little bit shorter, that kind of thing. And within that staffing company, Josh Gamble, myself, Ken Clark, once we started doing this automation for ourselves, we really recognized that it shouldn't just be for ourselves. We've really latched onto something that could be used by the entire market. And so it took us, a number of years. We built analytics. We built all this tracking functionality. We built, a lot of things that really enabled programmatic. And our focus at the time was just, taking one employer's jobs and giving it to a source, not necessarily the programmatic that's become what it is today, is that everybody shares the job with everybody else and everybody gets a penny. It wasn't really arbitrage kind of at all. It was just enabling employers to select a source and control their budget and get good performance.
So like one interface for an employer to say, I want to send this job to this job board, this job to this one, et cetera.
Yeah.
And there are a number of companies out there that do that still, the Broadbeans of the world and the eQuests, et cetera. I'm just sort of thinking about the timing too, because 2009 was, it was about 8-9 years after Google popularized pay-per-click advertising. They didn't invent it, but they popularized it, and that was pretty much programmatic early on. So I guess what you were doing was taking what had already been created on the consumer side and bringing it to the job advertising side.
Yeah, a lot of the things that I've done, over my career has been taking something that I find frustrating and making it easy, making it better, to find a problem and solve it. And in this industry, we didn't have easy ways to participate in pay-per-click advertising, so I wanted to create one.
Yeah, and so you moved over to Aspen Tech Labs. A year and a half ago? How long ago was it?
It's been 7 months. So yeah, Recruitics was a 16-year run. I left there at the end of June and joined Aspen in September. Mid-September. So yeah, different perspective for me. I get to work with all of this data that I didn't have access to. Like at Recruitics, we would take a customer's jobs in, look at all their performance data, turn that into algorithms and things that helped automate their spend. But we didn't have access to the full job market data. So now I get to look at 10 million jobs instead of 100 at a time, things like that. So,
and your role at Aspen, head of innovation, when I saw that, and I was like, okay, that's a perfect job for Tim. I think that you're probably one of those people, if they tried to put like some bumpers on you, I think those bumpers wouldn't last for very long. So I get the feeling that on a daily basis, weekly basis, you're probably looking in a whole bunch of different directions, at data, at other business products, whatever. Probably most of it you conclude pretty quickly, you know what, this isn't going to go anywhere. This might be interesting, but it's not a business. But let's talk about some of the stuff that you're working on, that you're interested in, that you've done in your career, that job boards and organizations that are closely related to us, the programmatics, the employment advertising agencies, et cetera, that they should care about. When you and I were kind of talking before the call, I think the first one that came up was SEO. You mentioned it a minute ago with an apology. And yes, there are a lot of job boards who still will curse the name Indeed for being so good at what they do. That's just the reality. They've executed extremely well and dominate. They still very much dominate the search results. Not as much as it was, say, like 5 years ago, but it's still amazing. For job boards that, especially those who are newer, who don't have much visibility on the search engines, maybe talk about some of the strategies that you think still have validity, not what was happening 15 years ago that's really no longer a thing, but if there are like 2 or 3 things that you think that job boards should do now to help them get better SEO visibility, better organic traffic as a result, maybe talk about that.
Yeah, and by the way, yes, innovation is a good role for me. I've had all the roles over my career. At Recruitics, I was head of product, head of at this, that, and the other thing, and I can engineer, I can play an economist on the podcast, I can do that kind of stuff, but no one particular role was really right for me. So I like the innovation aspect of this role, and so I'm looking at different ways to do that from a different perspective now. And to answer your second question, so getting more visibility these days, I don't necessarily there's AI, of course, we could talk about that later, but I think there's opportunity there for somebody who's not Indeed or one of the leaders to get traction in a way that wasn't possible a couple years ago. But but in prepping, I was kind of making a list of the things that I've done throughout my career, and were they more valid 15 years ago? Maybe they were easier, but they're still valid now. So a quick list: brand engagement, SEO, SEM, affiliate and partner programs, social media, Google for Jobs, program, all of these things, programmatic and as well. It's a little cheaper now, but it's still valid. All of these things, I think everybody, to pick 1 or 3 that job board should focus on is hard. I think you need to do all of those things. At Aspen, we're making data available, from APIs to bulk feeds to, so for example, if you don't have the job that your job seekers are looking for, you've attracted a candidate to your website and you don't have a job to show them, that's a bad thing. So our jobs index product answers that. We have APIs. We have, if you need wage information, our wage API can deliver what should you pay for this job? Is your payment, is your salary that you're putting on the job appropriate? if you don't have a salary, in some states you need to have one. So, just guessing is not necessarily suitable these days. We have like all this data that we can make available on APIs, or like I said, bulk feeds, or in many different ways that can serve both the job seeker and the employer customer that's paying for the job posting. But serving the job seeker by presenting more information other than what was typed into the job description field of the ATS can really enhance and allow Google and the other search engines, or now AI, to recognize that you're a place where there's valuable content and users can get value from being sent there, and thus Google and others will send you there.
Yeah, you mentioned programmatic, and one thing we do a lot of that at College Recruiter, both buying and selling traffic, and a lot of our customers do the same thing. In terms of like sending jobs to us, one of the criticisms that I've heard about it, and I think there's some validity to it, is if that same job is sent out to 100 job boards, we're all running the same job. Google doesn't like that because of the duplicate content. What I've also heard, however, and I think that some of the better, more sophisticated players do this, is that they enhance that page. So like you were saying, like with salary data, I think when we were prepping for the call, you also mentioned things like job trends. So building a job detail page, a company profile page, where you're providing that candidate with a lot of information that just goes beyond the job description or the job posting, I think Google really likes that. And is that in when you were at Indeed and Recruitics, now at Aspen, is that a strategy that you've seen works, or is that just a lot of talk? Or
that definitely works. So I think if you go to the root of what Google wants, it's send have valuable information that your users will appreciate, and then Google will see that they're sending a click their user to a valuable website. And so any way to enhance the page beyond just a job description that it pops up an ad or pops up a user a capture form or something like that to get information. Like, I know that's what everybody wants. They wanted to get the user, get their information, get them as a member of the site, but getting them in the first place to the site is requires probably a little bit more than the job description itself.
Yeah. So the last thing that I wanted to talk with you about, kind of like one-on-one, and then we'll open it up to everybody for conversation. And if anybody has questions or comments, just use the Google Meet raise hand feature. But let's talk about the candidate data that you just mentioned. Forever, job boards have been collecting candidate data. Some job boards do a better job of it, some less, some enhance the data. But one of the things I've seen a lot of over the last couple of years is that more and more job boards are using that candidate data as a moat. They're really enhancing it. They're using a lot of tech to take that job candidate, the candidate data, the job posting, and do scoring, matching, ranking, trying to improve the quality, not as much noise, not as many applications, and instead higher quality applications. Tim, talk with us a bit about the value of collecting candidate data, presenting employers with maybe fewer candidates, but ones that are of what the employer would consider to be of higher quality. And then also let's talk a bit about the risks of doing that. Sorry to throw 3 questions at you at once, but
yeah,
but that's why you get paid the big bucks for this, right?
I've been looking a lot at supply versus demand, supply and demand data, like how many are the candidates for this job? Where can I go find them? Throughout Recruitics and Aspen. And at Aspen, I'm building a business intelligence product that can answer those questions. But looking at the specific, I think kind of to jump to the punchline, I think we have a problem. We have a problem in this industry where recruiters, hiring managers, TA people are getting flooded with applications that all look like they are probably suitable for the job, and using AI to match, using AI to first of all, AI allows that to happen in the first place, but then using AI to match, score, rank is, as we know, causing really just lawsuits to happen because that could exclude, like if there's bias in these models, and bottom line, like having 400 applicants to a job and having to rank them all, and it's just overwhelming recruiters. So I don't know. At Aspen, I'm trying to take a little different look at it. Like when putting out a job, like let's look at the supply and demand first. Let's look at really targeting. But the problem the industry has with flooding recruiters with too many applicants is not one that there's currently a solution for. I don't have the answer to that. Maybe as an industry overall, we all need to look at it. Programmatic, I think, is part of the problem. Like it made things so easier. We greased the wheels. We're putting jobs everywhere. It's easier to find them than ever, easier to apply than ever. But it caused a problem in the meantime.
I like the analogy that, about the dog chasing the school bus. If the dog actually catches a school bus, now what does it do with it? And I think for several years, employers were really struggling with a lack of applicant flow. And so they did everything that they could to increase that applicant flow. Now they've got it. Now they don't want it. And, and granted, the economy, the labor market have really changed. But the one-click apply, the lack of good friction in that process, I think that's not the job board's fault or for us to solve if we're not delivering that solution. But I agree with you. There's the programmatic piece, or where employers give us, or any other job board, here are 100 postings and here's a $10,000 budget, go. And there's just like no real direction about which jobs they actually need help with, which jobs they won't. We have employers that give us a flat monthly budget, a flat CPC, and some of the jobs are incredibly easy to source candidates for, and some of them are impossible. And inevitably what happens is that budget gets chewed up by the jobs that don't really need the support. And when we don't know that from the employer, there's not much we can do about it. We have to do a better job, I think, as an industry of really understanding our clients and really understanding their needs. And I think our clients need to do a better job of communicating that. So I'll get off of my soapbox here for at least for a moment. This is the point where I think these conversations become really valuable, where people in the roundtable jump in, share what they're doing, ask questions, push back with comments. So anybody who wants to jump in, please, unmute yourself, do that, the hand raise. All right, we've got one. And people have posted stuff into the comments, including my friend Joe Stubblebine wishing a happy birthday to Ward Chrisman, so we can all sing happy birthday. I believe Ward is 29 again today, so that's nice. Okay, so Jim Durbin posted, this is why I think we're seeing a lot of talent operations roles opening up. How can and Tim, question for you: how can we be better partners with our vendors? And how does the benefit is internally? There's a typo in there.
What can internal TA do
to
get benefit, but also because that's the problem, as you mentioned, you guys can't do anything if we're not telling you. But instead of just disposition data, what can we actually be doing as clients? Like what needs to be done? Who's got what responsibilities? What can internal TA do?
So one of the things Recruitics tried to solve for was applying the budget to the jobs that needed it the most. And I think, Stephen, you just described a case where that wasn't happening. So that's one place to start. Being better partners with vendors. So I think what we're probably going to see is employers pushing back. Like, I don't want those 400 candidates. I don't want, like, I'm not going to pay for them. Like, so CPA and CPC are, volume driven. Like, it's volume for the job board provider. They make money by sending more and more and more. But we're going to see, like, it's now a different market. It's different than it has been the 18 years that I've been in it. We're going to see employers push back and say, I don't want that. I'm not going to pay for 1,000 candidates for a copywriter position. I am only going to give you 3 jobs that those jobs have budget. Like, we're going to see more of that. So I think the whole industry needs to move away from a volume-based model. Somebody mentioned, I think it was Jim mentioned, disposition data. Like, I don't think that's the answer. That is helping grease the wheels further, helping other, helping sites understand which candidates are suitable for a job. That's great, but really they're trying to understand where did I get this candidate? What source did I get it from? And I'm going to send you more. So the model really is still the problem. Now, I said at the top of the call, like, I love CPC, I love pay-per-click, I love SEM, SEO, like, but volume's not the thing that the industry needs right now. It's quality. And maybe as middle people, before passing the candidate to the employer, we really, if we can do it in some way that's legal, need to qualify those candidates and make sure we're sending quality to employers if we want to keep getting budget from them.
Cool. Matt Farah, you've got your hand up. Why don't we go to you?
It follows on from that then, I suppose, is the question, do you feel that a performance model where we're looking at triggers and conversions further up the funnel could be the solution? So rather than charging for a click or an application, we're charging for interview or offer or placement instead.
I know that's hard, like tracking a quality applicant, tracking a hire, like that gets more into the staffing model. It's harder, but perhaps, like, I think that the challenge there is every recruiter is different. Everybody's going to flag, well, this is a quality, that one's not, but the next person might do the opposite. It gets a lot harder. So I don't know, but performance that's monetized by volume is where the challenge is, I think.
It's so highly subjective, isn't it? Like you can have a recruiter who on Monday they come into work and they're feeling great, and they're going to be more likely to say that that is of quality. And on Tuesday, they wrecked their car on the way to work and everything just looks awful, and so they're just like that. Now suddenly that same kind of candidate is not of quality. I guess are you running into that, Matt?
I guess what I meant was, rather than it being subjective, which is what you're talking about, it's objective, which would need either complete 100% trust in your client telling you, yes, we've made a placement or we've made an interview, therefore we're going to pay you, or we go down the disposition route, which Tim was just talking about, where we get hard data to confirm hard results and conversions.
Yeah, or even knockout questions. Like for in your niche in one of your niches with nurses, for example, if the person applies and they're great, but they're not licensed to be a nurse, that's not what you want to be sending to your employees.
No, you're a nurse or you're not a nurse. That's simple. But you might be a cancer nurse and they're looking for an IV nurse, and so you're ineligible. I suppose what I mean is, frankly, imagine that you go to the full extreme where, as a job board, you are paid when a candidate is hired. It's indisputable. Now, We can argue whether that's right, wrong, fair or not, but at least it's hard, totally objective evidence that you have delivered. Is that a future for us?
I think it would be great. Actually, I mean, I think that's suitable. Like but the challenge would be like, well, if of those 400 candidates that applied, if 20 came from, one job board, 20 came from another, 20 came from another, like that doesn't mean that job board didn't do a good job. It just means that they picked one of the 400. So does that mean that the industry gets hurt a lot because that only one got paid? I think that's a model challenge, but in the long run, the one who gets rewarded maybe the most should be the one that provided the hire.
I think you also get into a problem with multiple sources where the candidate drives by your facility every day. So, the sign on the outside of your building is going to trigger some interest. They maybe see a posting on Indeed. They go over to LinkedIn to contact the hiring manager and they apply at a career fair. Like, what's the source? That becomes a problem. I've got a hand raised by Jeff Taylor. Jeff, fire away.
Yeah. Hey, Matt. Your comment, I think, was great. I think one of the challenges about paying on the hire, first of all, like 22% of hires don't make a month. And so where do you chase it? Do you pay for somebody that's hired or do you pay for somebody that's hired that sticks? Do we have to deal with the emotion of the hiring manager? That's one of the most unstable parts of this process, right? And so if the hiring manager turns down your candidate at that point, was that your fault or was that the hiring manager had a bad day? It is so hard to get, let's say, a slate of 8 or 10 qualified candidates. So the other thing is I'm seeing a couple things happening right now. I think CPQA, which is typically, do you have the licenses? Have you not committed a felony? You check a set of knockout questions. That seems to be where people are right now. And that's falling way short of the kind of quality bar that we're discussing. And then you have in this process, how do we evaluate the quality? I think flight to quality is something that we're all talking about, but this has been the holy grail for the last 35 years. It's like it never has really changed. And so I worry about the attribution of the hire being where we get paid. I think that's going to be a big challenge. I think one other thing we're not talking much about is the fraud of fake applicants is like becoming the number one issue for companies, and they're becoming less and less open to the idea of even hiring somebody from the outside without having them triple vetted through an agency or whatever, because they don't know what's going to happen. And it's a C-suite issue. Make sure that you do everything in your power not to actually hire somebody that could be a bad actor. And so these are all issues I think that we're kind of struggling with. I'm very much in this camp of shortlist and building more relationship around the consumers. That's really where Boom Band's anchor points are. And hello to everybody. Hey, Tim.
Jeff, I thought you were going to also say that the resume is not enough to match on. I know that's one of your points. And I agree, the resume is really not enough to disqualify or qualify someone these days. So
now, if you just play that for a second, I think over the last 2 years in particular, I think we've seen this kind of race to the bottom of how do you trick the applicant tracking system? And it's been going for a while, but it's just getting easier and easier to use the job posting as the cheat sheet or the open book test, and just to make that look alike. I was talking to a huge employer in Boston that got 8,000 applicants over the last 3 weeks. This is actually about 4 months ago when this happened, but I just talked with the company this week. They're still having the same problem. And there's like a paralysis now, 9 recruiters, way too many applicants. The first applicants that they start peeling back are bad. And so the amount of time TAs are spending trying to clear the chaff from the wheat is so expensive that they're raising their hands and saying we have to give up. What are we going to do? So I think that as an industry, we are at a melting point right now. This has been part of my soapbox that I've been on, but I think we should talk about it. I think it's beyond a problem. It's actually at the paralysis state right now.
Yeah. So, Tim, any silver bullets there?
Well, now I think we're uncovering the things that we need to work on. I don't have a silver bullet for them, but as an industry overall, that's where the work of the next few years is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, Jeff, I'm glad that you mentioned it. When you talked about the 8,000 applicants, were they looking to hire one person and they got 8,000 applicants? Okay.
No, you've got 40 recs, 9 recruiters.
Okay.
And so, every recruiter is dealing with a manageable number of recs with an unmanageable number of applicants. And so they're the ATS sort of generic nature of the way I call it like an 82 problem. You used to have 10% of the resumes were an 82 or above, and now you have 50 or 60% of the resumes are an 82 or above. I'm generalizing. There are 10 interfaces out there. They all do some job with actually evaluating who's better or not better. But the challenge is that they're just not getting to enough of the quality people through the classic kind of application process. So it's actually taking too long for the recruiters. So they're basically sort of going out of business, spending time talking to unqualified people. They're not able to get the jobs done. Are other people hearing this? It's a very recognizable employer in Boston that's dealing with this right now. It's like this week they're saying, okay, what do we do differently?
Yeah. Anybody want to chime in? Yeah. I mean, I suspect that practically every employer of any size is dealing with we can't separate the wheat from the chaff issue. I mean, I think a couple of years ago, it was actually kind of unusual to have candidates using LLMs to be writing their resumes and matching it up against the job description. I remember products from 15 years ago. There was a company that we partnered with for a while called PrepTel that did that kind of thing. So it's nothing new, but I think the difference now is probably a slight majority of candidates are doing this all the time. And so I think the candidates aren't necessarily fake, but I think it's just becoming harder to differentiate between some of the candidates 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago that would take more time to write their resume and did a better job of convincing the employer that they were well suited. That advantage is gone now because the candidates who weren't spending as much time now don't need to. They can just upload the job description, upload their resume to ChatGPT or whatever, and then in a minute they've got back what it used to take a couple of hours for candidates. It raised the floor. I don't think it lowered the ceiling, if that makes sense.
You also have to start being a good editor now, because ChatGPT does a good job in some areas, but it also adds in things that you don't have. And so I have a job seeker podcast where I just help 3 job seekers every week, just work through everything. And they're all using it. I don't have to ask about it. They're offering it up, and they're all saying, like, it's actually saying things that I don't do, and I have to catch it. And sometimes I don't catch it. And that's where, if you think about just exaggerating that by hundreds of thousands of people that are actively in the market doing this, that's a mess.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe Stubblebine, Lensa, you've got your hand up. Joe, good to see you.
Good to see everybody on the call. First of all, I'm a huge fan. Tim, I've known you forever. Really appreciate everything you've done in the space. And it's always interesting because you're, a bit of an introvert and you don't come out that often, and you are really the godfather of programmatic. It's a really cool, someday maybe there'll be some HR museum of history with Jerry Crispin's head as on top of the building. And that'll be one of your hallmark, legacies for the space. So I appreciate you, and I certainly appreciate everyone else on the call. I had a quick question, Tim. So I generally focus on the employer side of the business, but really been interested in a lot of these new consumer job seeker tools. Obviously, recruiters and applicant tracking systems are using AI, and job seekers are starting to catch on that they really need to do the same. And one of my recent personal projects, because I'm kind of a recruitment advertising nerd with nothing to do on the weekends, I started cataloging all of these tools on a website called jobsearchtools.ai. And there's a number of them out there. And I think in the future, it could be really very likely that each of us will have basically a career concierge AI or agent that basically acts like a headhunter or reverse headhunter, or acts as a personal job search partner. It was interesting because as soon as Apply IQ product, and they've made a lot of acquisitions recently to expand the use of that product, about 35% of the folks that are using Apply IQ are actually happily employed. It's just that they're too busy to really do that research to go find that next role. And with the growing number of these career concierge tools that help job seekers, search and find and apply to jobs, and companies like Aspen, obviously, that have all of the data on the jobs, these tools like AI Apply and Swooped and others that are, consumer-based, monthly fee-based products can just simply use this data to automatically match with their millions and millions of consumer customers. And in a sense, effectively bypass the job board, right? Sending the candidate directly to the company careers page to apply directly into the ATS. I'm curious, can you actually foresee a day when employers may not need to spend any money on job advertising at all?
Yes. And you want me to admit that on a podcast called Job Leaders Roundtable? No, I think one of the things we haven't touched on as much is what we as an industry are putting the job seeker through right now, and it's just as bad for them as it is for recruiters and job board operators and all of us. Like, job seekers they know they're one of 400 applicants or 1,000 applicants, and they know they're never going to hear back from 99% of the employers that they apply to. And they're frustrated, and they probably hate the products of many of the that are represented on this call today, because they know they're going to go there, they're going to spend a bunch of time, and maybe AI makes it faster for them now, but they're going to spend a bunch of time and apply to jobs that nobody gets back to them from. So I think there is a potential that they get so frustrated that they're not going to use job boards anymore, or they're not going to use the same old job board that does the same thing that it has for 20 years, that they will find a way to find the company career site, choose an employer that they want to go work for somehow, whether it's AI, like going to AI and asking who's hiring in my area, give me the top 5 employers, and then spending the time, instead of copying and pasting a ChatGPT, they go to those 5 employers, look around their career sites, and find a way to find a recruiter. Like, that may be coming. Now, once they find the recruiter, there's still the challenge of, well, that recruiter is too busy to, answer their email or other things like that. But there's kind of always that potential. When Google for Jobs came out, there was that potential that job boards wouldn't get as much traffic because Google could just send users directly to the career site, and we know that didn't happen. But there, and I think Google botched what they were trying to do at that point. But there is, I would say, like, an opportunity. So, a couple of years ago, when ChatGPT came out and AI came out, I'm like, this is a chance for somebody to jump ahead of Indeed, jump ahead of LinkedIn, because maybe Google doesn't get as much of the users anymore, and people are going to other places to do searches. That it really hasn't happened yet, but it still can. People, it's just a different interface to search with. So if a new site comes along that really figures out how to be mentioned in LLM responses, that's an opportunity to take traffic away from the big guys. But yeah, solving for the job seeker, I think that's where it starts, because you solve for the job seeker, then they're going to find ways to, they're going to tell their friends, they're going to all the things that we talked about earlier, like SEO and SEM and programmatic and all these other things, are just about getting the candidate, helping the candidate find the place that offers them the most, that they can then find results from. And we may not, as an industry, be providing what they need right now.
Matt Farah, you've got your hand raised, and then after you, we'll go to Jeff Taylor.
So mine's super quick. I just want to.
Well, you can take as much time as you want, as long as we're finished in 11 minutes.
I completely back everything that Tim just said. We often talk in these meetings about the challenges for us or the challenges for our clients, and we talk about the volume of the flood, the inundation of applications for customers. The situation for job seekers is absolutely atrocious right now.
Yeah.
And we're either happily ensconced in a job, so we've not been a job seeker for years. Many of us have not been a young job seeker for many years. I know my daughter is applying for jobs and has been for 8 months now. It's terrible. Mm-hmm. So I think Tim is absolutely spot on. That is the big problem, because the job seekers drive everything. So that has to be solved. And I think we don't actually come up with any solutions for that. But Jeff is probably about to tell us about his solution.
Go for it, Jeff.
I wanted to bring up a thing, like something that's trending pretty hard right now, which is the idea of outbound instead of inbound. And for the first time, really, I've seen in my experience of 30 years at this more, the idea of actually going outbound as a scouting recruiter is something that companies are considering. And I mentioned it in the comments, but this idea of quiet hiring, what it means is, instead of putting a job posting, to the question earlier to Tim, instead of putting a job posting out in the market as an announcement so 1,000 people answer, you put what I call a job signal in the center. And then what you're doing is matching in databases, where then you're doing outreach to very high quality people. And then you're actually sort of traveling down the list to get to someone who has what I call like the propensity to move. This does have the effect of starting to limit the amount of job postings, because the company never really lets the job posting out of their control. And people like this, but we have a huge problem, and I am dealing with this problem, is email's not working. Email's not really working at all. And Google's in the process of trying to get more advertising. And so they're starting to create buckets of email where it's not just spam now it's promotional. It's very hard to get through. And then if you do get through, people are scared to death of clicking on an email, on a link. And so what could be a really interesting dynamic solution that's real-time happening is actually also a problem, because the way we've communicated for the last 20 years is by email, and it's always sort of worked, or at least you could expect a 4 or 6 or 8% response rate. And now the email response rates are very low, very low. And so I just want to throw it out there to see if anybody else is experiencing that. Tom and I have talked about this, and it's just an interesting market from that standpoint.
Yeah. So Jeff, I think what you're hitting on there is it's not just about having access to the candidate data. It's also being able to activate that candidate.
Yeah.
It's one thing to identify. It's another thing to engage. It's another thing to activate.
Right. But before you can even activate somebody, they can't even see it. They don't see it, right?
Yeah.
It's not even getting to the point where you're like, should I answer this or not answer this? Is this interesting and not interesting? They're not even getting to the point where the question's at the table in front of them.
Yeah. Just before we joined, I got a WhatsApp message offering me a fantastic job. And if anybody's looking to share their banking information with somebody in North Korea, just let me know. I'll be happy to forward it to them.
Hey, Jeff, can I piggyback on that real quick?
Sure, go for it, Jason.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff, this is exactly what we're doing. So we do true programmatic, right? So we don't distribute jobs. We don't do arbitrage, any of that.
Wait, hold on. So there's fake and there's true and false programmatic.
So programmatic as in job distribution, like that's what I consider, and then true programmatic as in omni-channel.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I didn't mean
So
to interrupt
if
you.
you wanna,
Working.
I don't want to derail, but hit
Yeah.
me up, like, and I'll show you a case study.
Yeah, if anybody's interested in what Jason's doing, he's with Talent XI, and I'd be happy to connect you if you don't have his contact information. Um, um, Tim, if we can go back to some of the stuff that we were talking a little bit earlier with respect to the candidate data and the risks there, because I think a lot of the solutions that we've been talking about or the issues for the last 15, maybe 20 minutes have been around job boards in some way doing some kind of filtering, some kind of selection screening. When you personally, when Aspen, maybe in some of your previous roles have looked at that, what are some of the, I don't know, red flags? Maybe is a good way of putting it. Things that we should be concerned about. I'm thinking about data privacy. I'm thinking about bias, discrimination. I'm also just thinking about, how do we know these systems even really work? If we're going to be ranking somebody at the bottom of, Jeff, what did you say? There were like 8,000 applicants or something like that. If we say that somebody is the 8,000th best candidate, is a recruiter ever going to look at that resume? And how do we know that they actually are the 8,000th best candidate?
Yeah. No, I think that's a problem. I'll just add a disclaimer. Like at Aspen, we're not really. I'm not spending much time looking at that.
Okay.
We don't have specific candidate data that we're looking at. We're looking at overall macroeconomic data in our business intelligence product. But prior to joining Aspen, before I left Recruitics /Telivity, I was working on a candidate matching effort. And recognize the challenges. First of all, email. Yes, it's a challenge. Like if I had a million candidate database to look at and match people to, and then email them, and they wouldn't reply. And even though I did it, I felt like I was doing a really, really good job doing some matching tech. Email doesn't work. Nobody saw those emails I was sending. But yeah, no, I think I think that the challenge in the U.S. at least is the laws are going to prevent us from really getting good at it. Like every time that a company's right now taking an innovative step towards trying to do better, they're getting sued. So how can we get better if we get sued? If no company has ever produced a technology that was good on, perfect on day one. So if, the labor department is just going to sue everybody, or, whatever department it is that's suing, that's a challenge. There's like the 3 or 4 very visible lawsuits right now that are going to cost millions of dollars to the companies that were trying to innovate. I don't know how we get past that.
Yeah, and we're talking Workday, Eightfold, iSIMS. I've heard that there are some others like that just aren't as high a profile, and they're all very different, right? Like the Eightfold one, for example, was about sort of how they're using consumer data, and are they? It's like if your bank if you go into a bank and ask for a loan and it runs a credit check on you, you need to know that. You need to give permission to that. And I think essentially at its core, that's what that lawsuit's about. It wasn't so much about screening and ranking. It was about the data that they're using and providing to their employers, right? Workday was about the sorting and ranking.
Yeah, there was one about bias. There was one about ranking using data that the candidate didn't provide themselves, like external data that they, the company found somewhere else on the internet, social media or something.
Yeah.
There's a number of these lawsuits that seem to be blocking everything that sounds like a good idea. Like, so we need to find a way around that.
Yeah, it kind of calls into question for me too about not necessarily like where the whether these systems are a good idea, but also just sort of like where they sit. You know, I bet in the last 2 weeks, and you know, we're relatively small, but in the last 2 weeks, I think I personally have handled like 3 or 4 pretty detailed questionnaires from clients asking about how we're managing our data, what the AI usage is, etc. And I can only imagine what some of the larger players are having to deal with. And when you go to an employer that on the one hand says quality, 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 and on the other hand says, don't you dare touch our candidate data with anything approaching AI, you know, I think it puts a lot of us into a difficult situation. They're asking us to do something, but not allowing us to do it. And it's hard. We've got about 1 minute left. Anybody have any sort of closing thoughts, a quick question, something that they'd like to share? Going once, going twice. All right. Well, cool. Tim, on behalf of everybody, thank you so much for joining us, for powering through your cold.
Steve, I just wanted to say hi to Tim. Sorry, I'm at a hotel and I wasn't quick on the finger. So Tim, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Good to see everybody on this call. It's been a while for some of the faces that I see here. It's great to chat with everybody. Reach out. I'm around if the data that Aspen has can be made use of in any way, whether it's our wage data or jobs data. Coming out with a new business intelligence product very soon that I've personally been working on. I'd be happy to show it to anybody on the call, and figure out if there's usefulness to your business or to employers. And yeah, just happy to chat with everybody.
Yeah, and that the labor market reports that Aspen publishes are just really superb. Much more nuanced. There's a lot more analytical work there that they add value to. It's really fantastic. A month from now, on June 11th, 11 a.m. Eastern, as always, the guest is going to be William Tincup. And my guess is, given the guest, there will be the occasional F-bomb dropped, probably also a cigar and maybe a glass of bourbon. So it should be fun. Tim, cheers. Thank you for everything that you've done for the industry and that you'll continue to do.
Good to see you, everybody. Have a great weekend.